Hey everybody, KC here. So I was just reading a really good column by Jane Coaston, who writes for the New York Times. And she had me at the headline, which says, "Help, I'm stuck in a knowledge bubble and I need to get out," which seemed like an easier way of talking about epistemic closure, which is something we've talked about for a long time here on Morning News Beat. Epistemic closure being when you just assume the world is exactly what you see and not allowing for the possibility that there are other points of view and other ways of seeing things. So she starts out by talking about a guy named Paul Finebaum. And I have to be honest, I have never heard that name before, ever. But it ends up that Paul Finebaum, if you follow college football, especially if you follow SEC football, is really, really, really well known. He's got a 4-hour radio TV show that is millions of people watch and listen to. And he is just a household name in the South, right? People just love this guy. But I've never heard of him before. And the fact of the matter is, Jane Coaston had never heard of him either. And she writes, if you live outside the South or the realm of college football, you may never have heard of him. My editor hadn't, and neither did one of my other colleagues, who's one of the smartest people I know. That's no failing on their part or yours. It just means that you, like me, and like Paul Finebaum, live in a particular knowledge bubble. Knowledge bubbles are normal. We generally know a lot about the things that we care about most. She writes, I write this newsletter for the New York Times, which means that I write this for you, the subscribers. Those of you who are reading this probably know a lot about American politics and are steeped in a particular East Coast-centric culture. I'm going to assume that some of you might know less about, say, the inner workings of a call-in radio show that focuses on college football teams in the Southeast. Knowledge bubbles, she writes, become problematic and even dangerous when we pretend as though they don't exist or don't matter. Because what we don't know about the lives of our neighbors and fellow citizens and why they think the way they do is almost as important as what we do know. I just think that's so smart. And it speaks to things that, people in business have to think about going forward. It should be pointed out that when Jane Coaston actually did an interview with Paul Finebaum, and Paul Finebaum has his own knowledge bubble, right? And in fact, one of the things that he points out in the interview is the fact that he's sort of had to expand his thinking. Because for a long time, he just was talking about SEC football to people who loved SEC football. But as it became more popular and more national, he had to allow for the possibility that there were going to be teams outside the SEC who might be better and who had to be acknowledged as being better. And that would really tick off some of his, core consumers. But at the end of the day, he had to be accurate and talk to a broader audience. It's a great point. And retailers have to think about this. What we don't know is either as important and maybe more important as what we do know. And we have to allow for the possibility that people who work for us, people who shop at our stores, they may have all different priorities than we have. They have different frames of reference than we have. They have different ways of thinking about the world than we have. Maybe, maybe not. But we have to keep that in mind going forward. Because if we're going to communicate with them effectively, if we're going to talk to them in a way that it's going to allow us to manage them, lead them, sell them something, we're going to have to understand the fact that they may think differently than we do. And what we don't know about them could be a critical factor in being able to communicate with them going forward. Great piece by Jane Coaston in the New York Times. Made me think about it. Again, it's epistemic closure. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.